Welcome to this week's edition of Tech Sales Advice, folks. My name is Chris White. I am your host, and this is the LinkedIn Live show for tech sales professionals and tech sales leaders. And as I like to say, folks, these conversations are by design, unscripted, unrehearsed, and unpredictable. And one of my favorite guests or favorite types of guests, if I can use that term, are authors of books, particularly in our space. And that's precisely what we have on the show today. Her name is Sherri Mazza. She is the author of Unlocking Presales Success, the insight selling methodology for solution engineers. We're going to be talking about the book. We're going to be talking about insight selling and whatever else we happen to stumble upon. Sherri, thank you so much for being here. It's a delight to see you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me. I feel honored that you have me on this program. I've been watching you for quite a long time, and to be a part of this on the other side of it is just a complete honor for me. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, it's a delight to have you, and I have to give you props for having the book hanging on the wall, just like I have there. So you're clearly doing something right. Congratulations on publishing the book.
Thank you.
I know firsthand how much effort goes into that. So kudos to you. And I'm excited to talk a little bit more about what inspired you to write the book, what people might uncover when they read it themselves. But before we get there, I find it interesting to hear everyone's journey into pre-sales or technical sales. So do you mind just taking a minute and sort of sharing your story of how you got into pre-sales?
Yeah. So I kind of stumbled into pre-sales, to be honest with you. Many years ago, I don't want to say how many because it'll date me, but I was a Unix admin at a small company called PHH in Baltimore, Maryland. And my foundation was on Unix, Solaris, all of that. I left there, went to a company called advertising.com and started managing their data center. Building out the entire network from, the Sun systems to their application systems to their web environment, the whole thing. Went to a company called Sienna. I don't know if you know who Sienna is, but
is it Sienna Wireless or just Sienna?
Plain Sienna.
Okay,
yeah.
So I'm thinking of somebody different. Okay.
Yeah. They're in Maryland as well. They're headquartered in Maryland. They're a networking company. They build network switches for telcos, and I was managing their data center for them there, building out the Unix environment that supported their businesses, and it supported their engineering teams who were actually building out the design of those networking equipment. And one day, one of the Sun Microsystem CEs or account managers said, Sherri, you've been selling our products to your executives for years. Wouldn't you like to get paid for it? And I was like, wow, that's interesting. And, at the time I had 2 little children and I was on call all the time, which is really difficult when you have a baby, I would have to change a baby, go in, bring a system up, come home, feed a baby, change a baby, put them to sleep and go back to bed. And then just, start that whole thing all over again. And the idea of, helping customers with their business problems really intrigued me, right? Yeah. And so I got into it and I started working at Sun Microsystems, and I loved it. It was just so fascinating for me to go help other people with the problems that I've been trying to solve in my data centers for years.
Yeah.
That's how I got into it. And then I went, then Sun was bought by Oracle, and I worked for Oracle for almost a decade. Selling Sun products and Oracle to the federal government.
Yep.
I worked briefly for a security company, and then I worked for VMware for several years. And now I also work. Right now I'm working at Pure Storage. So it's so much fun to help, to feel like you're a part of something bigger than everybody, bigger than yourself, and helping them build their businesses or help, federal government with their problems too. it's been a fascinating, fun ride for me.
That's awesome. It's such a good story. And I love hearing everyone say, and it's funny, you use the word stumbled into it. So many of us sort of stumble into it. And the fact that not only are you now in an opportunity or in a position to help others, you were mentioning the federal government. I too sold to the federal government for almost a decade. So I certainly understand that sort of environment. But the gentleman who invited you to consider this role said another operative word, which is, and get paid pretty well to do so, right?
Yeah.
So like this is kind of the best of both worlds. So I think, and for those of us who, when we find ourselves in this role and we thrive, there's really no other profession, right?
Yeah.
So incredibly,
I don't know that I could ever go back, because it's just,
without a doubt.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, your passion comes through certainly in the video and your words, and I know it comes through in your book as well. By the way, Sherri, let me just say a quick hello to Cliff. He's based in Richmond, Virginia, and he's saying that he also got his start in x86 Unix Solaris, indeed, and then selling nice on weekends. Yep, indeed. That's a life. By the way, folks, because this is a live conversation, I want to welcome and invite any of you to say hello if you're out there and care to say hello. If you have any questions for Sherri or myself, please feel free. We don't see who's out there, so we love hearing from folks. So Sherri, you started out basically as a technical, I'll use the term data center admin. You're working with these high-tech, boxes and racks. You're invited to consider this job, and who knows if it was even called sales engineering at the time, and you've gone through a number of different roles. What inspired you to write a book?
Well, it's been a passion project of mine for the last 6 or so years. When I started at VMware, I was working with solution architects, and I think there was a lot of confusion in what we were trying to do in that role. And so I was working with my manager at the time, and I had been doing a lot of research on insight selling, and I really just wanted to help that team. And so I started like some of that back then. So I started kind of helping build out what that might look like.
Okay.
And then about a year ago, my former boss said to me, "Listen, you've been thinking about writing a book for years. This is a great opportunity for you to start doing that." And I thought, okay. And he actually lit a fire under my butt. Like, I'm not going to lie. He said, it was the end of November. He said, "I want to see an outline and a rough draft of 2 pages, of 2 chapters by the beginning of January."
Amazing.
And it was that, I think it was the push I needed to like get off my butt and actually do something about it.
Yeah.
And 20 years ago, when we were starting out as solution engineers, there wasn't a lot of references out there for us, right?
By the way, there still aren't. I mean, there's more, but there's still not a ton.
Yeah, there's more than there was back then, but you're right, there's still not a lot.
Yeah.
And so I felt like if I would have known this back when I was starting, I probably would have been a better engineer. I would have had a lot bigger opportunities closing. I would have had driven larger pipeline if I would have known all this stuff back then. So it's really about helping the next generation of SEs or even SEs that are been in it for a long time, helping them discover new ways of driving pipeline and building up your revenue. I also noticed that there weren't a lot of women out there who were writing about this.
Yeah.
And I wanted to inspire women in this field that they can do anything they want. And I really wanted to inspire girls in STEM to see that there's somebody out there that looks like them that's doing this kind of thing too. So it was all those things that inspired.
Well, good for you. I think those are some really powerful words. And do you care to give your manager credit by name and give
Paul
him?
Gentile, you're awesome. I love you. You supported me throughout all this, and Yvette Edwards as well, who was also my leader at VMware. She's been a terrific partner and like an inspiration for me. So those two are the ones that really.
And I'm sorry, I missed the gentleman's name. What's his name?
Paul Gentile.
Paul Gentile. Okay, I think he and I are connected. Well,
yeah, he's turned me on to the group. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but I think there's something for any manager who might listen to this, either live or the recording. There's something to be said for motivating your people and inspiring your people beyond just what they can do for the company or for the team, right? And what I hear you saying is that Paul knew that you had a passion for this, you had a desire to do this, and he took it upon himself to encourage you and drive you.
Yeah.
You may be familiar with Ron Whitson. He recently published a book as well. And I sort of played coach for him. And I'll say, and I have to say, it was almost as satisfying, if not more satisfying, for me to see his book published than it was to see my book published.
Yeah.
And he wrote the book, right? So shout out to Paul and shout out to Yvette, and for any manager, particularly if you're earlier in your career, the more we can inspire our people to do things that they want to do and aspire to, the more satisfied we are going to be in our profession. So just a fabulous story. All right, let's pick this apart a little bit further. So you've got this passion. Oh, actually, there's one I wanted to rewind just one more moment. You mentioned that you were working with the solution architects.
Mm-hmm.
So were you also a solution architect, or did you have a different role? And how was your role different than the solution architects, and what were their role?
I was a solution architect lead. And the solution architect was really supposed to be focused on the business, on customers' business, versus being focused on speeds, feeds, operational things like that. All the things that you might think an SE. I think they thought of us as Uber SEs, to be honest with you. And so the idea was to really define our role to the company so that they understood that we're really working on, big idea thinking, right? Versus going and doing demos, doing POCs. We're part of that. Excellent. We were helping to facilitate some of that, but we weren't doing that role. The solution architect was like just kind of focused on like the business piece of it. Yeah.
I'm super glad that I asked, because I was actually guessing the opposite. When I heard solution architect, I was thinking more technical build out than business value. And in my sort of nomenclature, I might almost think of that more as like a value engineer or an enterprise architect.
Yeah.
So your team was more responsible for creating the big picture, creating the vision, helping the customer understand business value. So that's incredibly helpful context. So as you were working with the solution architects, then it sounds like you had to better define the role within the organization. What were some of the things that you were noticing? What were some of the challenges or mistakes that they were making? And what was some of the guidance and some of the coaching that you were giving them back then?
I think some of the challenges were, SEs weren't really willing to evolve, or, just they were very focused in their swim lanes.
We tend to get stuck in our lane.
Yeah, we get stuck in our lane, and they didn't want the help of what we were trying to provide. But as soon as you start seeing that you're able to maybe triple your pipeline, maybe bring in 20-30% more revenue on a deal that you once thought would be X and now it's Y, people start to look up and go, oh, okay. I mean, it wasn't just SEs that kind of pushed back. We would have, AEs who would push back too, because, they they might think that you're adding time to their deal.
Yeah.
And sometimes you are, but
Yeah.
sometimes adding time to your deal grows your deal, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. Well, and here's what I think I hear you saying. And by the way, a gentleman named Jason Gass has just chimed in to say hello. So sounds like he worked with you at VMware. Jason, thanks for saying hello. Glad you joined us today. So what I hear you saying is that one of the roles of the solution architect was to help architect maybe a more complete solution
yeah,
for the customer, but the account executive may have interpreted that as, well, you're going to slow down my deal, you're going to complicate my deal,
yeah,
and they may resist that. But if they see that, oh, as a result of you coming in and creating more value, not only are we doing more and serving the customer more, we're actually making the deals bigger, which is not a bad thing for the wallet. So
exactly.
it just took time to my guess is educate the account executives even on the value that you're adding. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you wrote a book for pre-sales focusing on insight selling. My assumption at this point is that insight selling became one of the strategies or one of the elements that made you and your team of solution architects successful in your role.
Yeah.
So may I invite you to begin by defining insight selling from your perspective?
So for me, insight selling is really, I look at it this way. Our customers are faced with overwhelming data and information. Like today, you can go out as a customer and you can download applications, you could download software, you could test, you could demo, you can do all that without ever talking to a vendor, right? So they're inundated with information and data. What insight selling does is it's more of a proactive approach. It's bringing to your customer insights that they might not have thought of in the past.
Yeah.
That is, it's offering new perspectives and it's challenging what they currently think, right?
Yeah.
And that I noticed over my time as an SE or my time as an SE manager, we weren't doing enough of. And so that's why this became a passion project for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're really good. SE's sales in general, we're really good at going out and diving into an opportunity without doing the pre-work.
Yeah. 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 We're eager to just dive in and show up and throw up, as we like to say.
And we're taught that by our companies, right? Like we're taught that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as you were sharing your definition or your explanation of insight selling, the sentence that came to mind for me, or the idea that came to mind for me, is from the perspective of a customer, tell me something I don't already know.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Or get me thinking of something that I haven't been, but maybe should be.
Yes.
Right.
Well, so in the book, I actually reference a customer who sent an email to us because we were planning to come in and do a presentation, but the customer came back and said, my expectation from this meeting is that you bring me some insights from customers that you're currently working with in this industry that can help us in our business. And that changed everything for us. We were like, oh, okay. Now we know what you're looking for, and we can adapt to that meeting.
Yeah.
And it changed everything with that relationship with that customer.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, Cliff just chimed in. It's a good way to put it. SE is helping cut through the noise so customers can focus on outcomes, not capabilities. And that's really what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we can take and have a point of view, have a position, and have the courage to take a stance on that, because I think that's what fears or what some maybe SEs are afraid of is, well, I don't want to tell them what to do, or I don't want to insult them. What do you say to somebody who maybe feels like it's not really my place to tell them what to do?
Yeah, I would say you need to make an investment in understanding your customer's business. It's not, it will pay off in the end. I know for me, it was scary to go into a customer and act as if I knew their business better than they did, because you don't, obviously, but you have to do the research and you have to bring that. You know that there are customers out there facing very similar things that they are.
Yeah.
And so you can bring those little nuggets to them
Right.
without insulting the customer, without making assumptions that you know their business better than them.
Right.
They're hungry for it, to be honest with you. They're hungry to understand what's out there that could help them bring value to their business, because
Right.
IT folks need to bring value to their business as well. So they're
Right.
hungry for that information. So don't be afraid to go out there and invest the time to understand it and then help them build it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think this is where we become true experts, right?
Yeah.
Be a student of the industry. Be a student of your particular domain, because you're right. If we show up without new ideas, fresh ideas, things that they haven't thought of, then we're not really adding value to the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Funny, I did a whole thing on Monday. I was at Demo Fest Monday, and I did a whole talk on value selling. In fact, the title was a little provocative. I said, I know you think you're selling value, but you're really not. but one of my points was you should be adding value to every conversation. And to me, with this idea of insight selling, you're adding value. Now, the title, the subtitle of the book is Insight Selling Methodology. So could I invite you to share a little bit of the methodology that you talk through in the book?
Yeah. So chapter 4 is really the methodology that I came up with. And I'm a big believer in the power of 3.
Love that.
Because it's easy to remember, it's efficient, it's it's a part, it resonates in our human psyche. So the power of 3, the methodology I came up with is explore, evaluate, execute. And those 3 things really drive that insight selling methodology. When you read the book, you'll see that the explore phase is probably a little bigger than the evaluate and execute phase, because I believe that we as a sales team, we as SEs, we need to invest more time into understanding what our customers' business is. And so you lay the groundwork by doing the research in the explore phase. You lay the groundwork by crafting an insight. And I write in the book on how to craft an insight. I didn't come up with it. It's from another company that came up with it, but it's about setting the context, communicating the dilemma, articulating the why, capturing the motivation, and then envisioning what the ideal state looks like. And so when you bring to your customer that insight, you begin a process of getting an executive alignment with them. To move on to stage, evaluate, and execute, because you've got their interest. They're interested in what you want to share with them. And then you move into the evaluate stage, where we've been doing this for years, right? This is where you're collaborating. This is where you're creating workshops. This is where you're doing POCs and demos. This is where you are understanding their current environment. This is where you're ideating on a future state for them. This is what we've been doing for years. And then the execute phase is really executing on what that future state that you've already done the work on with your customer. You collaborated with them, so you know that there's a vision match, right? But you're presenting it back to executives saying, this is where we think your future state looks like. This is where we can help you get to that future state. And you're getting confirmation from the executive to move forward into the selling phase of it.
So powerful. I'm going to repeat some of what I heard to make sure that it's not lost on our audience. So explore, evaluate, and execute.
Yep.
And you started, and I was frantically trying to write as you were talking. So you talked about research, you talked about crafting the insight,
Yep.
and you started breaking down crafting the insight. And I want to make sure I got this. So
Mhm.
you said to craft the insight, you need to set context.
Yep.
You need to establish the dilemma.
Yep.
I thought the third thing was why. Is that correct?
Articulate your why. Yep.
Articulate the why.
Yep.
Okay. What was the fourth?
Capture the motivation. What
That,
motivates them? What's going to motivate them?
okay. You see what I'm doing here. I'm learning right now. The person paying the most attention to this is me right now. Okay. And what was number 5?
Envisioning the ideal state. And so I've gotten some pushback on that. Like, how can you envision the ideal state if you don't know what the customer needs? Well, the ideal state is really your product, right? You want to envision what your ideal state is, and then while you're doing your research, looking for all the things that you might want to help with, adding your product in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to me, this is where we really become viewed as trusted partners.
Yeah.
As we go through this process, if we identify maybe some context or maybe some goals or some outcomes that, you know what, our solution does not align with or cannot support, that we're honest enough to say, we can do these pieces. Yeah. We can't do these other pieces. So maybe we need a broader partnership, right? The moment we say something like that,
yeah,
the trust elevates beyond imagine, right? Yeah. Imagination.
I know people are going to be like scared to put an insight out there because it might not land, but that's okay because it's starting a conversation.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Well, and we're building trust.
What's that? You got to take that the initiative to just start the conversation. Doesn't have to land.
Yeah.
Great if it does, but if it doesn't, then you just start a conversation. Well, tell me, how can we? What do you envision your future to look like?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right.
So I don't know.
Right. It's so good. All right, I'm going to read those off again because this is really a key takeaway here. So if you're going to craft an insight, the 5 elements are set context. So what the way I hear that is just having clear context of maybe current state, the players involved, the organization, right, et cetera. Yeah. Number 1. Number 2, what's the dilemma? Clearly articulating what's the problem. What's the challenge? What's the, some people might call that the chasm between where we are and where you're trying to get to. Number 3 is the why. Now you said articulate the why and then the motivation, which to somebody like myself might sound similar. So how do you differentiate between articulate the why and define the motivation?
So let me frame it in kind of what I did in the book, and use an example.
Great.
I had a customer years ago. We're going to call them Drive Max.
Okay.
I don't want to mention their name. And so the context was all around, they had a fragmented approach. Their front store, and where they work, wasn't getting the same service as their online store.
Okay.
Fragmentation there. So that's your context, right?
There's context. Yep.
That's your context. The dilemma was they had disparate systems in both places, right?
Okay. Yep.
The why was they had to rely on patchwork apps and old digital tools.
Okay, so more of why is this a problem?
Why is this a problem?
Why? Okay.
Then the motivation was, they wanted to cultivate a more connected and more efficient environment for both their online customers and their in-store customers.
Okay.
And then you envision what the ideal state looks like by presenting your products to solve those problems.
What you just did is so powerful. And I believe there is not an organization or a decision maker on the planet who wouldn't be open to what you have to say after hearing you repeat back what you just repeated back.
Right.
Because what you've just demonstrated is, I understand the context. I understand the dilemma, the problem. I understand why this is a problem. I understand the motivation in trying to address this problem. And now we have some ideas on how you could actually fix this problem. They may not decide to buy from you, but I am certain, will agree to have a conversation with you.
Absolutely.
And give you an opportunity to share.
And I just want to bring up one of the ways that we went about coming up with this insight is that we actually went to the store and we did our own research, right? We were customers, both online.
Experience it for yourself.
Go experience and share with them our experience.
That is so fabulous. Sherri, let me pause just for a moment. Guy McDonald, I'm assuming is somebody you know.
Yes.
He's given and Guy, thank you for chiming in. We now have a book on the market specifically for pre-sales that takes the challenger sale methodology and focuses on pre-sale. And I was going to ask, it seems like the insight selling methodology is certainly akin to the idea of a challenger sale. Yeah.
I would say that insight selling is really a culmination of a lot of different methodologies. It's a culmination of solution selling, which came out in the 80s. It's a culmination of relationship selling, which came out in the 90s when SEs became like prominent in our industry. It's bringing in value selling. It's bringing in relationship selling.
Yeah.
It's all of it.
Yeah.
Plus providing insight to your customer to get that, them to bite on what you're selling.
Yeah. The way, like I said, the way you just laid that out, I mean, that's incredibly powerful. And Cliff is chiming in with a few more comments. Appreciate that, Cliff, and Jason as well. Future state helps bring the customer to the table and have input. Incredibly well said. And Cliff, tell a story. Yeah, tell a story. And so I'll give another shout out to Ron Whitson in his book. He talks about the 7 timeless behaviors. One of the 7 is tell a story. So and Sherri is literally just giving you the formula for telling a story and crafting a story. Let's go to the second step of the methodology. We've talked about explore, which I absolutely love. Let's talk about evaluate.
Yes.
What is involved in this idea of evaluate?
So after you've done the explore, you've kind of have a vision match with your executive, right? And that's important because you want to make sure that he or she is giving you access to the people that you need to help build what that future state might look like, right? And so evaluate is all around that collaboration piece. Right. It could take weeks. It could take months. It could take days. Right. Like it's whatever that process is for you to do the evaluate. You're collaborating. You're walking the floors, understanding what their environments look like, understanding their business, understanding their current state, and you're sitting down and ideating with your IT folks and hopefully your business folks to solve a problem.
Yeah.
It's really around that. And starting to build what that future state might look like. Yeah.
And what I love about this is it's not necessarily presuming what the solution is. It's not necessarily presuming that you have all the answer. It's as the name or the term suggests. Let's evaluate what your options might be. Now, this is going to be a gross over dramatization to make a point. But for example, I mean, one of your options may be, let's just close all your stores. And then, right? Well, okay, that's not an option. Okay, well, then we'll take that off the table.
Right.
What are some of your other options, right? But to me, when we sort of take this very open-ended approach, we sound less like sales professionals. We sound less like somebody just trying to sell you something. And if we sound less like somebody just trying to sell them something, they are that much more likely to what? Want to work with us.
Yes.
Right. And we are that much more likely to sell, even though we're actually doing the very opposite. And
you're
then
differentiating yourself from your competition because you're partnering with them in their business.
1000%. I say this to everybody I work with. You can only differentiate your product so much. You can only differentiate your service so much, but you can completely and totally differentiate their experience in working with you based on how you engage with them, based on whether or not you're making them the priority. So I could not agree more with the statement that you just made. By the way, I want to give that we recently had a church, but oh, fabulous. Good for that. Good for you. It's part of the Associate Academy library. Love seeing that. And Jason, yeah, awesome. Really well said, Jason. Appreciate those comments. Let's talk about this third stage, because I'll admit, when I'm thinking about sort of the buyer's journey, the buying process, I'm still not sure I fully understand where execute sort of comes into play. Is execute in your three-pronged methodology? Does that still happen before a purchase decision is made? Yeah. Or it does. Okay. So help me understand, what does execute look like?
Part of the pre-sales process for me. Okay. So execute is really when you've crafted your plan, right? You've crafted what you want, and you're executing that plan to who you want to purchase. Like your executive. You're presenting your future state. You're presenting, some people call it a roadmap of success. Some people call it a blueprint. Whatever you call it, this is where you're presenting it back to your to the folks that that are a part of the buying process, and you're getting buy-in, right? You're getting acceptance, or you're not.
Yep.
Or you're adapting to whatever they might be like, yeah, most of this looks really great, but I want to tweak this, and then you're just adapting to it, right? So then the next step is really around creating a world-class proposal, and that's on the sales side, the AE side, I believe, but the execute phase is really still in the pre-sales phase, where you're getting technical, what you call it, technical,
technical win?
A technical win. You're getting that technical win.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, that's precisely what Cliff just said. Execute, getting to technical close or deal close. I think it's technical close. But here are the words that I just wrote down, and again, I'm glad I asked. To me, what I'm hearing you say is execute is build a plan for success, and demonstrate the potential ROI of implementing that plan. Is that a fair way to interpret
ROI? I don't know that you need to, you're going to get ROI in a proposal from the financial ROI in a proposal. Right. But the technical return on investment, what that business value might look like to that customer.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad I asked. Really, really helpful. Sherri, let me push pause just for a moment. Folks, I'm speaking to Sherri Mazza. She is the author, and you can hold the book up again, the author of Unlocking Presales Success, the insight selling methodology for solution engineers. We've talked a great deal about just first the definition of insight selling, and the best way to think of it is, if we can share insights or ideas that answer the question, tell me something I don't already know, or share something tell me something I haven't considered but should. And then she broke down her methodology into 3 elements: explore, evaluate, and execute. And the 2 important elements of explore were research and craft your insight. And there were 5 elements of crafting the insight: context, dilemma, why is this a problem, what's the motivation for addressing the problem, and what does the ideal state look like. How am I doing so far, Sherri? Would I pass the quiz at this point?
I did, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. There's the only reason I have these conversations is to make me a little bit smarter. So I mean, that's my selfish reason for having these conversations. So I'm paying close attention. Sherri, we've got about 20 more. We've already been at this for 40 minutes, if you can believe that. Time always flies. We've talked about the definition. We've talked about the methodology. What are some, and there's one or two other very specific questions that I have, but before I get there, is there anything, or are there a few other things that if I'm somebody who maybe wants to embrace this idea of insight selling, that maybe I should consider or share an insight with us, another insight with us on insight selling?
Another insight on,
or maybe something that would surprise us, or where do people get this wrong from your perspective?
I think people get it wrong because they want to jump to the evaluate phase, right? We are all programmed as SEs, as AEs, in sales to get to the close. And we're and we want to do the evaluate phase before doing any of the research ahead of time, before doing all the pre-work. We automatically just want to do a demo, or we automatically want to drop some equipment in their environment and do a POC without doing the research and understanding how that kind of, that can, without understanding how we can actually help solve their business problem, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think that's where we fail. And that's why I spend so much time in the book in the explore phase. It's probably the biggest part in that chapter. It's because we don't do enough of it. We don't spend enough time in our customer's shoes.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a reason for it, right? Like, not all SEs have the same job. Some SEs support 20 or 30 accounts, and you can't know everything about, 20 or 30 accounts.
Right.
I would suggest pick the ones that you think are the most important, that have the most value to your company, that can drive the most pipeline or revenue, and use them as your guide, right? And learn as much as you can about them.
Yeah.
I think that's where we all need a little more work.
Yeah. I agree. I think the word that comes to mind for me is we need to be strategic, and we need to be intentional about where we focus our time.
Yeah.
And you're right. We love to jump to solutioning.
Yes.
That's what we're taught to do. That's what we're good at doing. Right. And by the way, let's be fair. Sometimes customers are part of the problem. Yes. Right. Sometimes customers just want to talk about, well, just tell me about your product. Tell me what you can do. And they sometimes resist this idea of discovery. Yeah. I think this is just an opinion. I think the reason people are so resistant at times, or prospects or customers are so resistant to discovery, is that usually the discovery process doesn't feel valuable for me, the prospect. It just seems like you're just trying to drag the information out of me that you can then turn around and use against me to sell me your stuff, right? Yeah. And what you're talking about, if I can use the term discovery and align discovery and the explore phase, it's actually for their benefit. It's so that we can understand better, to then collaborate with them in the evaluate phase to uncover some potential avenues for success. Yeah. So I have absolutely.
Yeah, I talk about that a little bit in the book, about discovery fatigue, right? Customers have discovery fatigue because every one of their vendors are asking them the exact same questions. And if you don't bring to them a nugget that of value to them, then it does turn them off, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Tell me something I don't already know. I don't
already know. Share with me some success stories that you've had in the past with customers in the same industry as me. Right. Anything like that. Share an insight.
Yeah. By the way, Cliff asked a great question. What skill? And I have a few ideas right off the top of my head, but of course I'm going to invite you to share first. What skills to develop to maybe take advantage or embrace this idea of insight selling?
I would first try to the skill that we just reviewed, understanding how to create an insight, right, and crafting one. Telling stories, like I think Cliff mentioned it earlier. I don't know if people are aware, but a fact wrapped in a story is 22 times more memorable than the fact alone.
Interesting.
Storytelling is so important in insight selling, in relationship selling, in any type of selling that you're doing. Storytelling actually it sets off hormones, right? Those hormones are cortisol, oxytocin, and dopamine. These are all hormones that help us remember and build a connection. It's the science of storytelling. It's kind of you're kind of doing a brain share at that point when you're telling a story. So I think that's a definitely a skill that everybody should try to put into their toolkit, right?
Yeah. The other thought that came to mind for me, and I have a feeling that you are going to agree with this wholeheartedly, is the ability to listen.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Right. I mean, we get so wrapped up into thinking about what it is that we're going to say, and we focus so much on the words, but the ability to not just listen, but be sincerely curious, be sincerely interested.
Yeah.
And then when we do have something to say, the ability to be as concise and clear and direct as possible.
Yeah.
To me, it's all about communication.
Yeah. 100% agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I love that.
yeah. So there was one other question that was sort of rattling around my brain as you've been sharing a number of different the methodologies and some of the techniques. And you touched on this briefly when I asked you about the ROI, and you mentioned a world-class proposal should be created as a result, and that's usually the responsibility of the account executives. What can we as sales engineers who are trying to embrace this idea of insight selling, what can we do to include the account executive in this process, or what should the account executives, if assuming we're working side by side with an account executive, how should we be collaborating with them, or what should they be doing in the context of sort of this process and methodology?
Yeah, this should not be done in a vacuum from your sales. This is really a partner thing. The research piece of it can be done in tandem with each other, and then sharing that information with each other, building out that insight, and then deciding whether or not the sales rep is going to present that insight to the executive, or the SE is going to be present, or maybe it's both. Right? Maybe the AE is presenting this to, a CEO, but the SE is going to present it to the IT director to get their buy-in. And then you have buy-in from all levels, right?
Yeah.
This is definitely not done in a vacuum. This is done in tandem with your sales counterpart, partnering with you all the way through.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that you're building for your future state architecture can be added into that world-class proposal that your AE is building, right? They could be building their world-class proposal in tandem as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever run into a scenario in which maybe you had an account executive who was either confused by the approach, reluctant about the approach, and if so, what did you do to maybe win that person over or get them to think differently about it?
I think that happens all the time, right? Like people are unwilling to change, whether you're an SE or you're an AE or you're a director or whatever. People are unwilling to change when they see the results. They see and they see that there is potential. When they see that you're making a connection with an executive in your account base, then that starts to change, right? It's the little steps. You'll get there. It's not going to happen overnight, but you'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the fact that you said it's not going to happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight, right? And I think sometimes we need to have the courage to take a stance and try some different things. I always say, I give my account executive, if my account executive and I have a difference of opinion on how to approach an engagement, how to approach a meeting, I always give them the final vote. I take a stance, but I give them the final vote. I call this the 51-49 rule, right? They get 51% of the vote, I get 49% of the vote, right? But I think we do need to find our voice. We need to take a stance. In fact, I mean, we can apply this whole idea of insight selling with our sales counterparts, right? Maybe there's an insight that, and there's another term that I like to use called a disruptive truth. And I think the idea of a disruptive truth is similar, or it's probably part of insight selling, right? And what do I mean by disruptive truth? It's those insights that we can share that are, first of all, just truth, right? Whether you believe me or not, it's not relevant, right? Gravity means that this pen is going to drop, whether you and I agree with gravity or not. It's just true. And then the second is it's counterintuitive in some way, right? It's like, I hadn't thought about that, or it's not something that I was aware of, right? We can use those to share with our sales counterparts at times to help them reset the way they think. So
I love that you said you could use this with your AEs, because when I was building this out for the solution architects at VMware, we were a small team in the Northeast. My manager at the time and I both thought that this could be something that could be adapted throughout the entire North America. And I presented this to the VP of solution engineering. And when I was done, I said, he was like, wow, this is great. I really like this. I think this could be something that we can implement and for the entire US. And I said, I'm glad to hear you say that, because in fact, I used insight selling to sell this to you and get off on it, right? Like I used insight, I used the whole thing, and was like, presented it back to him. I gave him an idea.
So powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful. Good for you. Well, Sherri, I know we're just about out of time. By the way, I do want to make just a quick shout out to Chris Turner. Chris was on the show recently, and actually he and I had a chat early this morning. But so true, Chris. There's a choreography. You have to get aligned in your prep with the AE and have the right voice and show and grow credibility. So well said, Chris. Thank you for sharing. Sherri, you've been an absolute delight to speak with. Any closing words that you care to share, either about the book or anything else that we've talked about?
Yeah, I just want to say, we are in the middle of a technical revolution. AI is changing things so fast, so quickly. It's a transformation that we all need to get ready for, and we need to pivot. And we need to be more influential with our customers and bringing them ideas, because our customers can really, do the research at this point. They can go out and do demos. They can go out and do hands-on labs. What they can't do is is build a relationship without you, right? Yeah. So you really need to differentiate yourself. You need to bring value. You need to bring the ideas, and you need to bring insights.
Yeah. Incredibly well said. Sherri, is it fair to say that you would welcome anybody reaching out to connect with you on LinkedIn?
And go online to Amazon and pick up my book. I'd really appreciate it. And if you do like what you read and you feel like it resonates with you, please leave a comment or
leave an Amazon, get it on Amazon, read it, leave an Amazon review, reach out to Sherri, and more importantly, leverage it in your job and in your profession. I can say without a moment's hesitation, it's an easy read. I was given the opportunity to read one of the very early versions. It's a great read. It's an easy read. You will be more informed and better in the field as a result. So, Sherri, it has been an absolute delight to have you on for a conversation. I'm going to invite you to hang around backstage just for a moment before we say goodbye. To those of you, Jason and Chris and Cliff and let's see, Guy and the others, and those all of you who are online for the live conversation, appreciate you being here. If you stuck around this long for the recording, thank you for doing that as well. You can always follow Tech Sales Advice to be alerted for these conversations. And of course, you can go to techsalesmastery.com to learn more about the work that my colleague Carrie and I do. Sherri, thank you so much for being here. Everyone else, we'll see you on the next Tech Sales Advice. Be well.